Yes, indeed, Marcel, it's been a week from hell, one would say, for the Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba. You'd understand that he has had the Crown Court disallowing his appeal on the lower court ruling on him of saying that he lied under oath on the Oppenheimer Fireblade Aviation Private Terminal at the Ora Tambo International Airport. We also understand that you've had the Public Protector report echoing the same judgment as the lower court and the Crown Court, basically, that disallowed his appeal. You've also had various political wranglings in the ANC itself, where you've got a younger generation of the ANC, of Malusi Gigaba's generation, such as the likes of Joe Maswangwani, whom was his deputy president when he was the president of the ANC Youth League. You've got the likes of Mzwandile Masina from Ekurhuleni, who are also of his generation, also saying that they will defend Malusi Gigaba at all costs, even if it means they have to be purged as well, which basically sets the tone of where the ANC may be at this point in time, of a generation that's fighting the older generation of the ANC that's currently incumbent in power. I'm not going to waste any further time. I'm going to throw straight to him. Are you still the Minister of Home Affairs? What is going on? Where are you at?
Look, I am still the Minister of Home Affairs. I will, of course, be meeting in the near future with the President to discuss all of these developments and to put my side of the story in this regard. I think we need to set the record straight, though, with regard to the Constitutional Court, because before the Constitutional Court was not the question whether I had lied under oath or not. It was the question of the Fireblade operation, because the Department of Home Affairs is of the opinion that we never gave approval for the Fireblade operation. If you have to give an approval, you do not rely on a ministerial verbal note. There is nowhere in the Public Finance Management Act or the Government Supply Chain Management where you meet a minister and say to him, Mr. Minister, I would like to do something. And the minister says, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And you consider that to be an approval. Now, ordinarily, by law, ministers are not accounting officers. So we are not involved. We don't get involved in the procurement processes. That is why even the bid adjudication committees and bid evaluation committees in departments are not established by ministers. We don't even know who serve on those committees, because those are the functions of the accounting officer. Even when bids have been adjudicated, the person who then communicates with the successful applicant is the Director General and not the minister. My role in this regard was to try and facilitate an agreement to get the opinion of the other relevant ministers, because in the port of entry environment, there are other departments that are involved. It's not only the Department of Home Affairs.
But, Minister, I'm going to give you my phone here, and I want you to see this letter, dated on the 5th of November, 2015, from the then General Manager at Luthuli House, Mr. Ignatius Jacobs, with regards to Fireblade. It reads, attention, Mr. Nikki Oppenheimer. Based on correspondence and discussions this letter has referenced, after due consideration, we can proudly state that Fireblade Aviation submission for a fixed base operator certificate has met all necessary requirements. Fireblade Aviation has been able to comply with the statutory requirements, and we can confirm that approval process has been validated by the relevant authorities. Furthermore, we confirm that the approval relevant certificate will be issued by the regulatory authority directly to Fireblade Aviation facility. Where does Luthuli House enter in this deal?
You are asking a relevant question, which I would also like to ask, because the then Secretary General of the African National Congress needs to provide an answer in this regard. The ANC is not government. It is the ruling party. The ANC is not the Department of Home Affairs.
But you've got them issuing a letter here.
This letter is therefore invalid and fraudulent because the ANC had no jurisdiction over this issue. It had no business entering the fray and issuing this letter. The former general manager of the African National Congress had no business issuing this letter. We in the Department of Home Affairs were undertaking the processes that we were undertaking, consulting with other government departments, and nowhere in that consultation did we go to the ANC to seek its written approval. Where I consulted with the leadership of the ANC, one, it was in relation to clarifying this letter when the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC brought to my attention that she had been made aware, alerted of this letter that she had given no authority to be written.
So in other words, you are saying Jesse Duarte knew of this letter, so did...
No. Jesse Duarte said to me she had been alerted of this letter that they and the former Secretary General had not given authorization for it to be written. So the SGO of the ANC had not given permission for this letter to be written. Mr. Ignatius Jacobs wrote this letter solely in his own individual right and wrote it as an authority of government. That's fraudulent.
What interest did he have?
Well, that's the question that he will need to answer, because he should, under ordinary circumstances, he should have been brought before the courts. If the courts were entertaining this issue and insisting that there is an authorization which has been given, because from us at Home Affairs, there is no letter of approval which we have given to the Oppenheimers. So the only approval which they have is this one, and one which was given to them by a junior official of Home Affairs who was the coordinator of the Border Control Coordinating Committee. Now, the BCOCC is a coordinating structure and not a policy-making structure. The coordinator of the BCOCC at a port of entry environment is not the accounting officer and therefore can't usurp the powers of the Director General and issue letters of contract which are way beyond his scope of mandate.
But Minister, Nikki Oppenheimer then released minutes of the meeting you and him had. Who is lying here? Is it you or Nikki Oppenheimer?
The minutes that Mr. Oppenheimer refers to are his own version of the events that took place in our meeting. Now, the meeting took place on the 28th of January, at which meeting I informed him that I had received a letter from the acting CEO, the then acting CEO of Dinel, who indicated in his letter that Dinel was giving permission, because remember, at the time I became Minister of Home Affairs in 2014, Fireblade was operating as a domestic terminal. It had already been built. It was a domestic terminal. The application for its services to be extended into a VVIP terminal operating for international flights had been submitted prior to my arrival. So when I became minister, they sent a follow-up letter requesting a decision. I then convened the department and said, what's the status of this? What do you understand about this? The then DG said to me, well, yes, there is such a request. We have requested other departments to respond to us. They have not. I then wrote a letter to the other departments, all the departments relevant: Health, Agriculture, State Security, Police, National Defense Force, Minister of Finance. I wrote to SARS, I wrote to the Minister of Transport, I wrote to AXA, and said to all of them, as members of the PCOCC, can you please respond and indicate your preference, your opinion on this, because we do not have a policy framework with regard to a VVIP terminal within a port of entry, which is a national key point. Now, some of the departments responded, the Minister of Transport, the Minister of Agriculture, and others. They responded. The majority of the ministers did not respond. That is why at the meeting of the 28th of January, when we met, I said Dinel, which had had a standoff with Fireblade over the extension of Fireblade as a VVIP terminal, a matter which had gone to court and had been ruled in favor of Dinel. I said, I can't, because this is a facility of Denel, and Denel says don't use that our facility as a VVIP terminal. Once we've received this letter, I then called Mr. Oppenheimer and said, okay, it seems that a major hurdle has been removed, but we still have to await the other ministers to respond before we can know how we go forward. Now, which then prompted us to say, it is possible that there could be a way forward, but let's wait for the other ministers to then respond to us. There was no approval given, because even if the other ministers would have responded affirmatively, we still would have to then undertake the supply chain management process. A submission would have to be written to the Director General. That had not happened. I then wrote a second letter to the ministers, still requesting them to respond. That is why on the 1st of April 2017, Mr. Oppenheimer then wrote me a subsequent letter, then saying to me, Minister, we are still awaiting your approval for our application. Now, ask yourself, if on the 28th of April, I had approved Fireblade, why write, on the 28th of January, I had approved Fireblade, why write me on the 1st of April and say we are still awaiting approval? If, as Mr. Oppenheimer says, they had received 27 approvals, presumably including this one from the ANC and some junior official of the PCOCC, why, when I met with him and said, we are awaiting responses from these other ministers, did he not bring all these 27 approvals to my attention so that we don't waste time, but we then take these approvals, confirm with relevant entities, and move on the basis of these approvals? So all of this, including the letter of the 1st of April, it proves beyond any measurable doubt that there was no approval obtained on the 28th of April.
So who is lying here? Is it you or Mr. Nicky Oppenheimer?
The issue for me really is not about the lie. And that's why even when we went to the Constitutional Court, we did not raise the issue of the lie, because primary to this issue is the use of a national asset, the existence of a policy framework to guide how we utilize national assets for private services, and the application of the principles of cooperative governance, which requires that I must exhaust the process of consulting my fellow colleagues, and secondly, the compliance with all existing legislation of Supply Chain Management and Public Finance Management Act.
Minister, I'm going to ask you this question again, and I please want a straight answer. Did you lie under oath? Yes or no?
No, I did not lie under oath.
Then who is lying?
No, it's not for me to determine some girl who lied under oath. Because here is the legal fact, a very fundamental fact. The allegation is that I wrote you minutes on the 28th of April, my version. There is no signature from you appended to these minutes, which confirms the correctness from a mutual point of view of these minutes, right? This is 28 January 2017. It's my version of the facts. But then I, on the 1st of April, 4 months down the line, I write another letter to you saying, I am still awaiting your approval. Who is lying? Is it me who says there was no approval on the 28th of April? Or you who claims on the 28th of January? Or you who claims there was an approval on the 28th of January? But on the 1st of April, you then write back to me and say, I am still awaiting your approval. The fact of the matter is that in government, approvals are not obtained through verbal notes from ministers. There is a process to be followed, and that process includes following the PFMA and the supply chain management. The implications of this ruling now is that anybody can meet a minister and present an idea and then take their version of the response of the minister to be the version of the agreement, and in actual fact, a binding version.
But Minister, with all due respect, when will Malusi Gigaba ever stand up and say, look, I did wrong here. I admit I've done wrong. From the Guptas, you have excluded yourself with their neutralization in South Africa. With the collapse of SAA, you've excluded yourself. In your stint in other departments as well, at ESCOM, when you were still Minister of Public Enterprises, you've excluded yourself. Nowhere in all of these scandals that you have been embroiled in, that you have ever admitted to any wrongdoing.
No.
Is Malusi Gigaba squeaky clean?
You need to be very fair with me, because we are dealing here not with broad brushes. We are dealing with specific issues in all of these instances. The collapse of SAA it followed a long, strenuous process during which I, both in my stint as Minister of Public Enterprises and as Minister of Finance, did my very best to try and save.
Where is the proof?
The proof is there in the processes that were followed.
Today, SAA is not profitable.
But
it's receiving bailouts day in and day out.
But you cannot attribute that to me as an individual. From the very first moment, you see, we need to be very fair in how we assess these things. From the very first moment, SAA was not properly capitalized. I raised that from the outset as Minister of Public Enterprises, and I was not the first person to do so. My predecessors had done so. We tried our very best to deal with this. I introduced a turnaround strategy in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, and insisted to SAA that they need to ensure that it gets implemented. Following a series of scandals at SAA, which included the appointment of a foreigner as CEO who was paid an enormous amount as a salary and was made to leave immediately thereafter. All of those issues are not being looked at. The fact that the company had been changing CEOs frequently, it had been changing turnaround strategies, it was operating a business unviable, an unviable business model, and all of that. And I can go to town about the problems that South African Airways is facing. Fast forward to 2017, when I went to President Zuma and said, Mr. President, we need to change the board of SAA. There are serious difficulties there. Among others, the funders, the debtors of SAA are refusing to lend SAA any more money. We obviously have to take drastic decisions, change the board, change the chair, take the following decisions in order to put the airline on the right footing, to address the difficulties that are there. So I've done my best to resolve those problems. So when you look at me, don't just come with broad allegations and say to me, on the basis of these broad allegations, Malusi must stand up and say, oh yeah, no, I admit to wrongdoing. The fact of the matter, come back to the issue of the fire blade. The fact of the matter, if I gave approval on the 28th of January, why on the 1st of April is there a follow-up letter saying give us an approval? And if I gave approval on the 28th of January, in actual fact, what the decision should be is that, Minister Gigaba, you acted out of step with your mandate and usurped the powers of the accounting officer and gave approval which in the Public Finance Management Act is not allowed of you as the minister, because no transactions can be entered into between a minister and an applicant. There was no competitive bidding process, and therefore as the minister, you should have stayed out of this. So we are having a wrong discussion about this, including about whether we should be allowing, because there is an entire policy debate, and that is why I have been saying that because this matter is of such public interest, it's no longer an issue between Home Affairs and Fireplate. We do need to propose in the Portfolio Committee a public consultation process so that the views of the public who have been expressing
Minister,
their views
Minister,
must also be taken into account on this issue.
I hear you, Minister, very well.
Yeah.
But in your meeting with the President, which you have asked for, I was alerted earlier on that you had asked him for a meeting today. I'm not sure if that meeting had transpired today. I saw he was addressing a pop crew meeting. Will you be tendering in your resignation, or will you be seeking for him to keep you in cabinet?
No, it's not my business. Remember that I didn't deploy myself as minister.
So will you be resigning?
No. I did not deploy myself as minister. I was deployed by the African National Congress. And so it's not for me to say, oh, Mr. President, there are all these allegations. The DA has gone to court asking for me, questioning my fitness to hold public office. There have been these developments. On the basis of this, I think a few media articles have been written calling for my resignation. Therefore, on the basis of this, I'm stepping down. I'm not going to do that, because if I did so, before I state my own side of the story, I table my version. In all of these processes, I have not been given an opportunity to state my side of the story, to present oral evidence, to provide proof as to my allegation that I did not give approval. So I'm not going to resign, but I will obviously be guided by my organization, the African National Congress, and by the President. Remember, I also serve at the pleasure of the President. So if the President were to say to me, Malusi, I think it's better for you to step down, of course, I'm not going to defy
Why do you have to be asked? Nhlanhla has set the bar high for his lies about the Gupta family. He said he has been there, he's seen them once or twice, but in fact, he had gone there 6 or 7 times, and he fell on his sword and resigned. Why can't you follow in the footsteps of Nhlanhla? You have been found by a court of law, by the High Court, to have lied.
No.
The Crown Court has disallowed your appeal. You have been found wanting on a number of occasions.
Samgelo, you are missing the point. And I set the record straight right from the outset about our Crown Court appeal. The Crown Court appeal had nothing to do with whether I had lied or not. It was about the operations of Fireplate. You see, so, the issue of the lies, unfortunately, the opportunity to appeal it was missed in between the reshuffles which took place last year. Because when I became Minister of Finance, my successor as Minister of Home Affairs decided to appeal the Fireplate, the High Court decision, but instructed that the issue of the lies be excluded from the appeal. The issue of the lies was a statement by a judge towards a ruling. It was a statement in passing towards a ruling, not the ruling itself. It's not part of the ruling. It is a statement towards the ruling. The ruling is still on the issue of the Fireplate. And so by the time we had to appeal to the Crown Court, when I had returned to Home Affairs, the process had long gone, and we couldn't disrespect the Crown Court by asking it to review a matter which had not been reviewed and appealed at the Supreme Court. Because by the time when we went to the Supreme Court of Appeal, this issue was not being appealed there. It had not been appealed even before the full bench of the High Court. So that matter has been missed, not by my own omission, but by the omission of those who succeeded me. And so it behoves me to then state my side of the story as to the issue of the lies. But the issue of the lies must really be taken in truth, not because you are prejudiced against a person. A person's dislike for me must not matter in applying fairness to the matter.
You?
No, we're not there.
But you are saying
no,
that
no, no,
a person's
I'm
judgment
saying,
should not be persuaded by their dislike
No.
of you. So you are alluding that the judge dislikes you or something.
I'm not talking about the judge. I'm talking to you. I'm saying to you, a person's dislike of me must not matter. Remember, this issue was not appealed at the Concord, so I'm not addressing myself to the judges of the Concord. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. I'm not addressing myself to the judges of the Concord. I'm addressing myself to the question of the lies which you have asked me. I'm saying when you entertain the question of the lies, you're prejudiced against me. And I'm not saying you are prejudiced against me.
Who is prejudiced against you?
We can get to that.
Who is prejudiced against you? But Minister, you can't. Minister.
Listen to what I'm saying.
Minister,
so that
you can't say people dislike you when they make
Samkelo,
judgments and not substantiate them.
Give me an opportunity to state
Feel
my
free.
point.
Go ahead, Minister.
Fairly.
Go ahead.
Because this is a point which has not been allowed to be made. The argument I'm making is that an opportunity was missed during the appeal process for the issue of the lies to be tested and validated or invalidated. And all I'm saying is, if the argument is that by saying there was no approval given for the fire blade, if it's argued that that was a lie, that the approval was actually given on the 28th of April, then why on the 28th of January, then why did the letter of the 1st of April still ask for an approval? The letter from the same person who claims that there was an approval on the 28th of January. Why doesn't that letter of the 1st of April say that subsequent to the approval given, can we now receive
Minister,
a letter that allows us to operate?
Is Mr. Nicky Oppenheimer working with certain people in the ANC to discredit you? Is that how you feel?
That is also not for me to say, but all I can say is I feel an avalanche. I feel an avalanche of pressure, all of which seems political, and a common narrative is being built up that seeks to paint me as a person who is not fit to hold public office without, one, giving me a fair opportunity to state my case, without listening to my side of the version of the stories, but a haste to get rid of me.
By who?
As if there is a fear that my continued existence in the public space is a threat to somebody. Well, perhaps in the near future that will come out. But I am heartened and glad that the younger generation of the ANC, to which I belong, is steadily and gradually coming up to say, we will defend our former president, because we believe that if he has done any wrong, that wrong must be dealt with fairly, but he must not be dealt with unfairly for political reasons in order to eliminate him from the picture.
You bring me to my next point. Who would want to eliminate you in the ANC, and what agenda would that serve?
That would presuppose that I have had a conversation with such people who would have come to me to say, we want to eliminate you. But I therefore can't speak on their behalf. All I can say is that for anybody who wishes to remove me from the public space, they must think again. I'm not going to be removed from the public space.
But why would they want to remove you from the public space?
Holding a public office in itself does not complete my existence in the public space, and therefore you know, even whatever my fate may be, insofar as public offices are concerned, for now, one thing for sure that is not going to happen is I am not going to step out of the public space.
Minister,
I am going to remain a member of the ANC. I'm going to remain in politics. And for those who are headed towards the future, they are going to meet with me there. or put differently, I am going to meet with them in that future.
Are you saying that you'll be contesting for a future high-profile position in the ANC,
I'm a
such
member-
as the deputy presidency or the presidency of the ANC?
I'm a member of the ANC in good standing. I've been a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC for 22 years, since 1996. And so I reserve every right to nominate and be nominated for any position. But that's not the issue that I am preoccupied with at the present stage. What I am saying is that I'm not going to buy out of the public stage. I am going to stay in the public stage,
Minister,
for long.
With all due respect, you sound like someone who is moving the goalposts and is not willing to admit or see wrong in themselves. In these past...
In what?
Let me finish, Minister. In these past years, you've been in government since the era of former President Thabo Mbeki,
right,
whom many accuse you of mimicking him in office, such as the former president of the Youth League, Julius Malema. In all of those years, your career seemed to be blossoming in the era of former President Thabo Mbeki. When former President Zuma took office, you also became a minister in that administration, whilst you were deputy minister in former Thabo Mbeki's administration. In the past 10 years or 9 years, you've been embroiled in so many scandals, from buying flowers with taxpayers' money, with being in public spats with Noma, your wife, and Buhle, to the recent video, and also governance issues, and being perceived as the Gupta stooge and minion. Is Malusi Gigaba willing to step back and introspect and say, I've done wrong here, there, and there, rather than saying there's a political conspiracy against me to eliminate me going towards the 2022 conference of the African National Congress?
Now, the issue of the 2022 conference, you introducing it, I didn't even talk about it. I talked about the future.
The future is 2022,
no,
Minister.
2022 is part of the future. The future is very long. I'm not about to die in 2022 or soon after 2022. I'm still around. I'm going to be around for many, many more years to come. But the issue is that, talk about all of those things. I am human. There are many mistakes which I make, like any other human being. The excessive, obsessive focus on me, my mistakes, real or perceived, is extraordinary. Because many of the people who also point to my mistakes have their own shortcomings, their own weaknesses. But maybe leave those aside. I've got my own weaknesses, I've got my own mistakes.
What are those mistakes?
Which I make, which I've made in public office and in my private life. So I cannot sit here and say to you that as a result of those, I therefore need to be crucified or made a sacrificial lamb for the attainment of certain political goals. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to sit back and say, oh, because of these, I'm the only person who makes mistakes. Therefore, I only fall on my sword. And all these other angels and saints that exist in this country must continue holding their swords up and not falling on them. If that must happen, then everybody must fall on their swords. And you would be surprised to know how many people would. The only difference between them and I is that there is, as I say, an excessive and obsessive focus on me, and others are hiding behind me and the focus and this focus on me, and therefore they are able to escape public scrutiny as a result of this focus on me.
Who are those people? And answer truthfully. Don't give a political
No.
answer, because you are taking aim indirectly at people, Minister.
No.
And you are not being forthright on this political conspiracy which you are talking about.
The political conspiracy expresses itself. People are doing it facelessly. I don't have to say I suspect so and so and so and so and so and so but you can see, I mean, take for example, the Committee on Public Enterprises convenes me to asks me to come and assist them in their investigations on ESCOM and things at ESCOM. I agree, I go there well prepared, I present my case, I sit down with them from, I think it was from morning though, I can't remember whether it was from 8 or from 10 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon. And I explained to them everything that happened, the board appointments, how they happened and stuff like that. And they complete their report. And they leak their report to Business Day, before giving me an opportunity to have sight of the preliminary report and to respond to it.
Has Jackson Mthembu,
No, Jackson is not a member of the committee.
As the chief whip of the ANC, has he ever called you to come and account for all of these findings, court rulings, allegations, some have not yet been proven? As the chief whip of the ANC,
it's not his business.
As a person who controls the ANC's deployees in the National Assembly, working with the Secretary General, have you ever been called to Luthuli House to account for all your misdeeds?
For the alleged, don't say misdeeds.
For the alleged
misdeeds, because I've been called to various platforms. I've sat at 2 inquiries already in Parliament. There is a 3rd one coming, and I've explained myself. So Comrade Jackson, as the chief whip, deals with the operations of Parliament and conduct of members of Parliament in relation to the operations of Parliament in the House. So he will not call me unless I misbehaved in the House or in relation to the Portfolio Committee. He would not call me to say, Comrade Malusi, as Minister of Home Affairs or as a Member of Parliament, you have missed so many sittings and stuff like that. No. So he hasn't. The relevant committees have to do the work that they have to do. And as I was saying, I have voluntarily and happily cooperated with 2 inquiries already. And of course, unfortunately, I've only learned this afternoon that one of the inquiries has very conveniently leaked their report to the media, without giving me the first opportunity to have sight of the report and an opportunity to respond to the preliminary findings. But all of this is being done deliberately to perpetuate a narrative which is not backed up by facts. So you continue to perpetuate this narrative to paint this person with a brush of wrongdoing and misdeeds, and you don't, on the one hand, by the time this person responds to the allegations, they've already been splashed out there in the media without this person having first opportunity to say, oh, but on this issue, things were like this or things are like this. A report was presented by the South African Council of Churches, by OUTA, which claimed that I opened the floodgates to Guptas to enter the country. That report presented by priests, men of high moral standards, without giving me the first opportunity to say, no, actually, where do you base this from?
Are you doubting their morality?
No, I'm not doubting their morality. I'm just saying that because of their high moral standards, they should have given me first opportunity to respond to it before they made it public. And when you read the report, it's baseless. It makes allegations which are completely baseless. It bases itself on facts which don't exist. When we came to the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs and we state our case, and that's why the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee kept asking me, Minister, are you taking responsibility for this? Because the point is, the members of the Gupta family, as we were saying, there are about 62 people who bear the Gupta surname in the country. And of all those 62 people, only 5 applied for naturalization during my term, and only 4 of course, only 5 were eventually naturalized, and 1 of them refused to take naturalization, so only 4. So, but the story which was planted before investigation was that you opened the floodgates, which created the impression that all the Gupta members, family members, were naturalized during my tenure, and as if to create the impression that the minister himself sits and administers naturalization applications. And
Minister,
the only reason these issues came to my desk was because they had applied for early naturalization, for naturalization under exceptional circumstances. Had they qualified without applying for early naturalization, the matters would not even have come to my desk, which means as a minister, all the people who get naturalized in the country, you don't even know who they are and under what circumstances they qualify. You only meet them during the naturalization ceremony.
Minister, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I am hoping you will be truthful. How many times have you been to Saxon World to meet the Guptas? Who did you meet at Saxon World? What was discussed?
As I've said before, to the Public Enterprises Committee and to the Home Affairs Committee. In actual fact, I'm in the process of trying to compile exactly, because, you know, relying on memory is not sufficient. It's not helpful to provide a direct answer to the question that you are asking. I met them several years ago. And my first meeting was at a social function. It was, as I have said, a Diwali function. And I kept meeting them at these social functions. No meetings, it was not meetings to discuss anything. You know, it's not as if I would go there for a specific meeting purpose. We sit down, we discuss this thing, we finish, and I go. So I didn't have a meeting agenda. It was meetings under social circumstances.
So you've never been to their
No,
compound?
I have. That's what I'm saying. I have. And that's why I'm saying I'm in the process of compiling.
In your capacity as a minister, you've been there?
In my capacity as a minister to discuss official business, no, I've not been to discuss official business. But I've gone there in my personal capacity for various social activities, but not to discuss official business.
What do you have in common with the Guptas in order for you to socialize with them?
Well, as I go to various other people for various other reasons, I actually do visit a number of other people. And I think the issue of this issue of the Guptas has highlighted, unfortunately, only in retrospect, the relationship or the need for people in executive office to review how they interact with people who are in business. Because ordinarily, when you get an invitation, you would, you know, it's a wedding, it's this function, it's that thing, it's a cocktail, it's, you know, you would just say, Minister, let me go and attend.
With all due respect, Minister, why would you still go to a notorious family who have all of these allegations they've accused of, that has allegedly violated South Africa's sovereignty by landing a private aircraft at Waterkloof, who have done so much misdeeds to the country, like they freed a dairy farm?
No.
And you still keep them as an acquaintance?
No. You are now making an allegation and stating it as fact. You are now making an allegation and stating it as fact. I don't keep them as acquaintance. The last time that I interacted with them, because I've tried to think of what's happened in recent years. The last time that I interacted with them was at the wedding. Now, the issue of the Frede farm, I didn't know about it then, and nobody in the country knew about it. The issue of landing at Waterkloof was raised, but it had been raised, but it had not been raised as intensely as it happened. So as it happened after the wedding. So at the wedding, we had confirmed. I went. I arrived and I left. I did not even sleep there. I arrived and I left before the wedding was over. And that was it. And after that, I then decided to keep my distance. And as you correctly say, as one would do when you realize that, well, it does seem that this person is attracting negative media publicity and negative sentiment, and there is a negative review of their conduct, and therefore you decide that, look, let me keep my distance.
Is there a difference between the Oppenheimers and the Guptas in regards to state capture? Many people have perceived the president of this country now, Cyril Ramaphosa, to be a person of white monopoly capital. And you've got the Guptas, on the other hand, who are competing economically in the same magnitude as the Guptas. Is there a difference between the two?
Look, I think that's not necessarily for me to make a judgment on.
But you've interacted with both of them.
Yes, I interacted with the Oppenheimers. Remember, this is a South African family. They are entrepreneurs. They've been in South Africa for the very longest of time. And when I began my tenure as Minister of Home Affairs and tried to get this thing resolved, I was trying to ensure that they get the answer that they were asking me to assist them with. And I had no prejudice either towards or against them. And I still don't have. I was just interacting with them as entrepreneurs, trying to assist in resolving a matter. It seemed that the issue of the fire blade, if it was made more widely accessible, and if there was necessary security controls, would be a good idea, but not as an international airport, because you already have OR Tambo International Airport. I know that the question has been raised about Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport and Lanseria, and what the difference is between these and the Fireblade. Fireblade is not, they're not applying for an international airport because OR Tambo is there. You can't have an international airport within an international airport. And Kruger Mpumalanga is an airport that was commissioned prior to 2010 when government took a decision that all provinces must have international airports. But because government didn't have capacity to develop its own airport, it decided to allow a private provider to build it. Lanseria was allowed to become an international airport in order to provide additional capacity to OR Tambo International Airport. So it seemed to be a good idea, providing it would be widely accessible and there would be necessary security controls. Now, this is okay, you know, but the issue is there was no policy framework, and due process still would have to be followed. It doesn't therefore require that we should cast aspersions on whether they are trying to capture the state as a result of this one incident. I don't know what they may be doing in other instances, but the problem though is the bullying that has taken place with regard to the pursuit of the Fireblade and the spread of untruths, the less than honest engagements, including obtaining a letter from the ANC of such a nature as this one, which is written as if it comes from an authority of government, getting junior officials in the BCOCC to write approvals when they are not authorized to do so. So all of these have been less than honest engagements with government, Minister, when all we were asking for is give us the opportunity to consult everybody who needs to be consulted for you to get the decision that you require.
As an ANC NEC member, while I was still a student at the Durban University of Technology, on many occasions, I have seen you addressing ANC fundraising gala dinners here in this province of KwaZulu-Natal. As a person who's participated in how the ANC raises its funds, do the Oppenheimers donate to the ANC? And if they do donate, what's in it for them?
No. I don't know whether they do donate, because the Treasurer General would keep the records of that. And as you know, I'm not the Treasurer General, and I don't sit in the Finance and Fundraising Committee, so I don't know.
Don't you find it fishy that Ignatius Jacobs' letter is in 2015 on the 5th of November, which was about, if I'm not mistaken, 9 or 8 months before the 2016 local government elections. And just before that, they had this approval, which they say they have, to operate their own VVIP terminal.
You know what?
Is this linked to party funding, that the Oppenheimers scratched your back as the African National Congress and you scratched their back as business people with what they wanted?
Remember what I said. The Deputy Secretary General of the ANC made it very clear to me that they had not given authorization for this letter to be done.
Can she say that under record?
She can say that under record, because they had not given authorization for this letter to be done. And so the ANC would not buy funding by allowing a national key point, an important state asset, to be bought for whatever party funding in preparation for local elections.
But Waterkloof took place. The Guptas landed at Waterkloof.
That was wrong, and there was due process followed to deal with that anomaly. That was wrong, and there was due process followed to deal with that anomaly. So you can compare, but the ANC would not allow for it to obtain money through these nefarious means. And so I think the Treasurer General and the ANC can speak for itself. All I'm saying in defense of the African National Congress is that we would not allow the ANC to obtain money by selling off, by trading a national key point in order to obtain election funding for the African National Congress. We wouldn't do that.
We are running out of time, Minister. I'm going to pose my last 2 questions to you. One, are you failing to maintain your own private lifestyle? We've seen the videos about you. You've bought flowers with the public purse's money. There have been spats from women over you. Are you failing to manage your personal lifestyle?
When somebody hacks your phone, are you failing to manage your private lifestyle?
My phone has never been hacked.
Exactly.
But
my phone is a subject of hackings almost on a daily basis. I have to keep changing my passwords on my phone and my emails. I have reports which have been submitted to the State Security Agency to that effect. And I am busy compiling an audit of all the instances where there have been failed attempts to hack my phone and my emails, including Friday before last. And in some instances, I've got proof and names of people who are involved in doing this. So,
have you furnished these names to the relevant authorities?
That's why I'm saying I'm in the process of compiling the audit. I'm in the process of compiling the audit because I need to assist them. I reported this issue to the police. I reported it to IPID, the Independent Police Investigations Directorate. I reported it to State Security DG, former DG. I reported it to the Inspector General. So I have taken the measures necessary for me. So when somebody hacks your phone, let's not blame you When I communicate with my wife, I have a right to be as romantic as I want with my wife. She's my wife. I paid lobola. I married her in broad daylight.
Well,
I have a right to be as romantic as I want. When I travel with her, you complain. When I'm being romantic with her, you hack my phone, you try to humiliate us, and you still complain. What do you want us to do? To stop being husband and wife? We're not going to do that.
Minister, my last question to you. When you meet the president, when you get that meeting with him, I'm not sure if you got it today. I heard that you were wanting that meeting from relevant authorities close to the president. Will you be handing in your resignation or not?
As I explained to you, I'm a deployee of the African National Congress, 1. 2, I serve at the pleasure of the president. It's not for me to preempt my political principles. If whatever they decide about my fate, having listened to my version of events, the important thing, the ANC doesn't act arbitrarily in relation to its cadres. It first listens to us because we also have our sides of the story to state.
Have they called you to attend the ANC's top 6 meeting tomorrow to account for your allegations or misdeeds?
No, I don't think I need to state that. If the Secretary General wishes to indicate whether I've been called or not, he will say so. As far as I know, the Secretary General is accessible to the public, to the media, to state those things, and I'm sure.
So you can't confirm nor deny that you've been called to this top 6 meeting?
No, I've not been called. I can confirm that I've not been called. I think the officials are very busy, and at the right time they will call me and I will go state my case. But the ANC does not act arbitrarily in relation to its members.
So you are fighting on to keep your post as a minister?
It's got nothing to do with fighting on to keep my position. It's about fighting on to protect my integrity and to protect my image, and to ensure that I do not become a victim of devious political campaigns. I will not be trampled upon. I'm not going to sit down and lie for people to walk all over me.
Well, that was the Minister of Home Affairs, Malusi Gigaba, saying he will not lie down and let people trample him and walk all over him. He will meet with the president, state his side of the story. If the ANC decides to recall him as a Home Affairs Minister, he will do so. It's not yet clear whether he will resign like in Ntlantlane as a Member of Parliament. Should that happen, will you resign as a Member of Parliament?
I don't know. I don't think Comrade Ntlantlane had only just become a Member of Parliament. So
it was the second time he'd resigned as a Member of Parliament?
Yeah, it depends. As I say, I'm a deployee of the ANC. I will do what the ANC asks me to do.
Well, that was the minister having his final words.